Hello, beautiful creative soul, and welcome back to another episode of Chakra-Care for the creative soul. And today's episode is all about your throat chakra, your truth chakra, and as a light worker, how to practice spiritual hygiene to take the very best care of it, especially right now at this moment. As of October 2nd, the beautiful solar eclipse, the new moon energies are still abundantly present. And this is a moment like no other where we are ready, we are being called forward to step into a new chapter of our lives. And so this is where restoring the sacred to your self-care becomes hand on heart. So incredibly important. Yes, so incredibly important. Because time feels like it's speeding up, right? I was just noticing that this morning. I was out for a beautiful forest bath in the ravine close to where I live, and just listening for, inspiration and guidance and connecting with the universe itself and that higher guidance. And I don't know if any of you have been experiencing this, and later on in the show, I'm going to go to the chat section and see if you have any questions or comments or just anything that you want to share. I highly encourage you to do that. I'd love to hear from you. I always appreciate it so much. But I've been noticing, and I'm just curious if any of you have been noticing this too, this acceleration is the word that I feel intuitively guided to use. And I choose that word carefully. Accelerated momentum. And it's palpable inside of me. And the reason I feel like today's show is so incredibly important, and I know there's someone out there who specifically really needs to hear this today, as I've needed to hear it many times before myself, and probably do again today by sharing it, is that when we're in that experience of momentum picking up, it's very important that we feel like we're flowing with it. And so what would keep us from feeling that way? Well, in my own experience, so far, what I've noticed that to be is any confusion energy, any hesitation, any doubt, but that confusion energy that comes from, instead of entraining with the energy that's moving forward and picking up momentum and feeling like I'm at one with it, I start to, anything that, I guess, in a nutshell, it doesn't really matter what you call it, anything that would start to have me lean away from that momentum for any reason whatsoever, then what's on an essential level happening, it's pulling me into separation from it, as opposed to feeling in harmony and attuned actually to the momentum. And so this is about starting with looking at ourselves first and noticing what's going on inside of ourselves. It's about our thoughts, our emotions, our body, and then how alive we feel as a result of those. How much life force energy is flowing through us. And are we allowing it? Are we inviting it in? And sometimes what can happen is we may have limiting beliefs around thoughts such as I'm not ready yet, and I know I've had that many times myself before. So today's episode is, to just put it out there on the table, is going to be especially important for anybody who's had the experience of holding themselves back. Because what we're really holding ourselves back from is our truth. And I'm not a psychologist or a psychotherapist. I've just been a very extremely curious and diligent soul along my journey so far. And so only take this if it resonates with and for you. But what I've been noticing along the way through my interest and curiosity in medical intuition and study of it and practice of it and all kinds of things, is that, and I was working with a client recently too, where this actually came up. The holding ourselves back is a holding ourselves back, like I said, from our truth. And this often stems from, earlier experiences. It's usually a younger version of ourselves that experienced a sense of it wasn't safe to move forward, and felt like there were so many things that were coming at us that maybe didn't make us feel safe. And so we tended to hold ourselves back because somehow our brains got wired and fired to believe that moving forward would actually endanger us on some level, emotionally, mentally, physically. And at the same time, if we're moving really, really quickly, there can also be the other imbalanced experience of that, which can also ironically contribute to a feeling of holding ourselves back. In that, if we were in environments where we were hurried a lot, we were pressured, we had to go with everybody else's flow, and therefore we lost that attunement to our own flow, our own inner creative flow, our own, what I like to call our soul song. Then what happens as a result is it becomes a learned habit. It becomes really ingrained in our way of being and doing in the world, but there's an undertow to it, one that says, um, I feel a little resentful, I feel a little angry, I feel a little put upon. And again, even if we're moving forward quickly, there's a bit of a disconnect because it always feels like it's related to a perception of an external force making us move forward quickly. And so there's always going to be this inner conflict, this push-pull energy between moving too quickly or intentionally wanting time to stand still so we don't have to move forward. So that's the crux of the matter. And excuse me, my throat itself is clearing a little bit as I share that with you, because this can manifest in all kinds of physical expressions too. Um, Hypothyroidism is one of them, and it's very rampant and why did I just say common in our in our modern lives. And again, we're a lot of us are bound to clock time, and maybe I was rebelling today when I came on at 11:04 or 11:05. I don't know. But this perception of time speeding up and the stories we make out of it and the thoughts we think about it and how those thoughts affect our emotions, which affect our physical bodies. And then these are a lot of little pitfalls and snares where we can get stuck. So you might be thinking, what does this have to do with the throat chakra? Well, I feel it has a lot to do with our throat chakra, and not only activating it and even balancing it, but ultimately stabilizing it. Because our throat chakra is our truth chakra. And if we've been entrained to one of these patterns of either digging in our heels, and we don't even remember why we started doing that on some level, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, or going with the hurried pace of life and feeling that knowing deep down that it's not our pace, that it's out of alignment for us some way, somehow, but feeling hooked into it in a way that we feel at the mercy of it, then this very much has to do with our truth. Because I know when I was first learning about the chakras, my impression of the throat chakra was it's all about speaking your truth. And you hear a lot of people about saying, let's be authentic, let's speak our truth, let's not, swallow our words. Yes, that is an important part of the throat chakra. I would venture to say an even more important part of our throat chakra is our capacity to listen first. listen to ourselves. In fact, fun fact, truth bomb, I'm a naturally curious soul, as some of you already know about me, and I'm sure a lot of you are too, or you wouldn't be listening to this. And it started off as books of the inner awakening journey. I inhaled books. And then, of course, when YouTube got bigger, you know, I followed so many people, and I'm fast and always been fascinated by different viewpoints in the spiritual awakening community. I have my own teachers that I follow. And curiously enough, before this show, and I usually stay on top of shares by my teachers and other people that I highly value their expanded vision and insight to guide me. And I was reflecting on this morning as I went for my walk. And I want to be completely cards on the table, fully transparent with all of you. I haven't listened to any of it, not because I don't value it and not because I won't. I'm in my mind to form, I was telling myself I was getting behind, but now I realize it's because for this show, I feel like there's a really important message here, definitely for someone and probably for more of you, that at this collective moment where literally a new earth is birthing, and we can either lean into that and find our soul song and flow in that and celebrate that, or not. We are at a point collectively, doesn't matter where we are on our inner awakening journey, where I feel like in order for us to continue to keep expanding, and birthing and co-creating the new earth together, we're at this sort of tipping point as in our intuitive development and empathic capacities, where I feel, and I'm going to use my own journey as an example, I feel it's very important that we listen to our own intuition first. For example, and I think this is pretty normal for a lot of people out there, and it's all good. It was a process I went through, and if that's feels right and perfect for you, then by all means continue to do it. I just had this felt sense this morning that, when we're oftentimes first starting our inner awakening journey, at least I know myself, I look to intuitives to guide me. I did intuitive healing sessions. I look to outer authorities to tell me predictions for the month, to illuminate things for me. And that's great, except I wasn't listening to me. I wasn't listening to, and when I say me and my intuition, I don't mean in that egocentric way of my way of seeing things. I mean, I wasn't to the fullest of my capacities just creating spaciousness within. I was a little. It wasn't that I wasn't at all, but I was letting those, messages in my inbox, my subscriptions, all that kind of stuff, I was going there first more often than not, and then going, oh yeah, that resonates with what I notice I'm thinking and feeling. But I didn't create that space to open my throat chakra, to fully activate it and listen first, and then flip it around and then go back and listen to the predictions by other people and fact check what I was, you know, picking up on myself. And it's curious because this journey of inner spiritual awakening is a cyclical one, and we cycle over and over again through the same, it feels like the same learnings, but it's nuanced, right? We cycle through it over and over again. At least that's what I've noticed. And I know the second time around when I did my Reiki training in a more committed way, in a deeper dive way, where I studied for 3 years and I crossed the city 3 to 4 times a week after teaching a full day in rush hour traffic to pursue my studies with my teacher and everything. I remember that in the way she trained me, she really encouraged me to trust what was coming through me for the client, and she would stand there with me while I was working. This is even before I started my case studies for the Canadian Reiki Association, of which I did 24 of them. For a good year, she would stand there beside me while I worked on a practice client that she brought in for me. And she would invite me and encourage me to really tune into what I was picking up on, clairsentiently, clairaudiently, clairvoyantly, etc. And just notice what I was noticing. And what always, excuse me, throat chakra's clearing as I say this, what really amused and delighted me beyond what I can even begin to share here was the awareness that, especially when it didn't make any sense to this mind to form up here, it had so much value for the person I was sharing it with. And that really delighted me to discover, as much as the person who was the recipient of it, what that meant for them, to be in the to co-pilot and to co-create and to hold space for that revelatory inner awakening process. And when we are giving ourselves permission to notice what we're noticing and then go and fact check our intuitive sense of things, I feel like this is a very necessary stage for a lot of us moving forward at this specific time on Earth, because you only have to go to YouTube to see the number of oracle card readings, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's wonderful that so many more people are opening to it and awakening to it. And I know a lot of us even guide people through processes like that. And at the same time, too, when I work with clients more and more, because of my own journey and my own experiences, I really want people to feel empowered to trust themselves more, because we have access to so much inner knowing and inner truth. And the other thing too is, sometimes I know someone might call me out for this, and I'm just going to be brave because it's time to be honest and truthful, and I always am, but especially on this episode, is that I've heard in passing from time to time the comment, well, I'm tired of hearing that's your truth and my truth and whatever, you know. I think the most honest thing we can say about truth is that this is my second point about truth today, is that it is relative. How can it not be relative? It is relative to our level of awareness, our experience in the world, and I'm going to just use a really clunky example to illustrate that. Back before airplanes existed, it just seemed like it was science fiction that anyone could cross the globe in the sky without being a bird. And so if you had shared that, with someone at the time, or conversely, someone later on who had never seen a plane, heard about a plane, or been on a plane, it would sound like, that's not my truth, kind of thing. So when we're talking about truth being relative and relative to our experience and our level of awareness and consciousness, I think that is a fair description of truth. And I feel like as each of us expands our awareness, our conscious awareness, then our recognition of certain truths, because there are also universal truths, and those go beyond just the personal experience of our lives. It's almost like with the first three chakras, the safety, the relationships, like the love, the peace, the joy, have to really fully anchor and stabilize first, so that we're not getting pulled out of that alignment with the deeper expression, the soulful knowing of who we are as a spirit beyond this body of form. If we're still kind of getting yanked this way and that, and distracted by our thoughts and emotions to the point where we're still kind of identifying with them and getting ensnared by them, that's all okay. It's just those universal truths are less accessible. So we have to start at the level of truth, which is relative, to experience, relative to knowing. And then we also have to jump up into the heart chakra, where I'm able to open to listening to other people's truths without needing to make them my truths, and to have my truths without um, needing other people to also think the same way or feel the same way as me in order to validate myself or to validate them. It's that place of compassion, that place of non-judgment. And then the gift in all of that is we start to move into that unified field of truth. Being there are certain truths that are beyond dogma, beyond sectarianism, beyond the ego mind, that are just deep knowings. They're beyond the mind of form. And so it starts with how we care for creating time and space in silence, in quietude. It can be moving our bodies, it can be sitting still. I find often times out in nature, that's where I feel connected the most to certain essential truths in me. And I have that moment to contemplate and reflect and feel into my body as I'm moving through a beautiful forest path like I did this morning. So, yeah, I feel like this episode, one of the things that has helped me along the way is, as we're going through this inner awakening journey, there'll be certain moments where I'll catch myself as my awareness is expanding, thinking or saying something out loud, and I call it back. I say cancel, clear, delete. That's one spiritual hygiene technique I like to use, because I call myself out in a loving, compassionate way, and I say, no, I recognize it's an old thought, and I interrupt it. I pattern interrupt it in a loving, attentive, aware way. And I just say it out loud. I'll say that sometimes when I'm talking, if I go to use an example because I'm trying to illustrate something, and then I think, oh my gosh, why did I frame it in that way? I'll say cancel, clear, delete. Because another thing, a lot of you've probably been noticing, I've been noticing too, and actually at work, I had a funny moment the other day with my educational assistant where he literally said something and then a moment later it appeared. And it doesn't matter what level of conscious awareness we're at, it's happening. It's just when we can be conscious of it, oh my gosh, it's delightful, right? To realize that this is another expanded offering that we have. In fact, there is a wonderful quote, and I'm just going to share with you. I saved it on my phone here this morning from another spiritual teacher who I greatly admire and respect, Emmanuel Dogger. And it's a wonderful quote. He says, before you respond to someone, remember that your response is also your agreement to establish an energy connection with them, which may change your energy field and vibrational frequency, right? I love that. So what we speak with our throat chakra is really important. And before we speak, it's that old caveat, think before you speak. But I would even go so far as to be before you speak. Be with yourself. And if you happen to speak and you're aware enough to notice that what you're speaking is somehow an old energy or a little incongruent or out of alignment with where your intentions are in terms of moving forward and what you want to co-create, then just lovingly call yourself out. Say cancel, clear, delete. And the third point I want to mention today relating to spiritual hygiene for light workers is our true chakras are opening up, and we're getting more and more trusting of our truth and of ourselves and of our cosmic mission. And all of this feeds into the larger point today about this is a time for dreams to birth, right? And so this is such an important chakra because it's that chakra of calling and inviting, our creations into being. So this last point I just want to mention is all about when we're out and about in the world. Someone told me once that's a very Canadian saying, out and about. I like it. I don't know if it is or not, but out and about in the world, that And I know this from being in front of large numbers of people every day at work as a teacher, that there are days when I can come home, and before I was fully aware of this, I could kind of feel like, where are all these thoughts coming from? As a highly sensitive soul, as an empath, I'm like, why am I dreaming about this? Why is this person appearing? Like, there was just, or even having difficulty falling asleep sometimes. And then during the pandemic, I had the blessing of working with a wonderful coach and spiritual teacher, who Kristen Alexander, who had a very simple phrase that I've used ever since, and I really love it. And it was a simple exercise called calling your energy back, cleansed, cleared, and refined at the end of the day. And so this is something that I do at the end of the day. Or if I've been out during the day in a crowd and I come back home and I want to shift back into, make sure I'm really tuning into and attuned to my own soul frequency, my own energy. And again, my intention is always to stay attuned to it as I move throughout the day. It just depends, because there are moments in my own journey where if there's a strong, forceful energy that comes at me, or there are energies around me that are very, very strong, as much as I try not to, I try to keep my own sense of self, but it's larger than self, sense of soul frequency anchored, there's lots of opportunities for learning. And so when I come home or when I'm going to sleep at night, the simple practice of placing my hands on my heart and feeling the warmth of my hands on my heart and the warmth of my heart on my hands, and just focusing on my breathing to bring myself back into the present moment, and then calling my energy back. And you can visualize it. I often visualize it as streams of energy flowing back into me, and calling my energy back from anyone that I've sent it to during the day in a way that it's been purified, cleansed, refined, because refined meaning that there may have been certain spiritual growth, learnings, lessons during the day, insights, aha moments. So when I purify it and I cleanse it, I want to include that in it. I want to call the energy back that's been refined, that's been cured, I guess you could say, by life's experiences, and call them back into my heart, back into my soul, back into my sense of being, back into my inner soul frequency and soul song. And this is such an important spiritual hygiene practice for really keeping that connection to what it feels like and is like to be in my own energy. Of course, walks in nature help with that too. And just dancing, moving my body as a chakra dance facilitator, that helps me too. So we all have our own ways of doing that, and you can play with that yourself. And maybe you already use something like that. I'd be curious to know if you do that. But these are all ways that we can care for our energy. Because the last piece I want to share before I go to the chat is, why is this so important? Why is it important to call back our energy, consciously call back our energy at the end of being in a large group of people or a busy day? Well, the way I often like to express this idea of inspiration, and this becomes important as it ties into birthing our dreams too, is that we receive downloads, and they filter through this body of form and the energetic centers that receive that broadcast from spirit, right? We tune into that station when we're open to it. And it comes through our connection, having that clear connection at our crown chakra, our third eye, our inner seeing, our intuition, and then the listening in our throat chakra. And then speaking it forward. Maybe we're journaling about it. Maybe we're sharing it with someone. Maybe we're affirming it to ourselves. What we say about what we see and what we've received is so important, because then that moves into our heart area, our love for it, into our joyous action, into our new relationship with what we're co-creating, and into anchoring it. That's the flow, right? Now imagine if you're out in a crowded place and you've had this amazing download and you can see it, you can sense it and everything in your mind's eye, and then you go to speak it, and the words you're speaking about it are not your words. You heard someone make a comment about someone else who had a similar vision, and you go to speak it, and then there's this peanut gallery here that's kind of like an echo that's not a positive echo, and that creates some static on the line. That creates a little bit of confusion energy. And then if there was any wobbliness in the lower chakras for you, in other words, our throat chakra and our sacral chakra are very closely connected. So that web of relationships that we have out there with people around us can oftentimes create static on the line. Also, too, we may even forget for a moment, just put aside just for a second our own dreams and visions. Imagine we're out in a busy place and we're feeling great, and then we walk into a room, and then all of a sudden, there we were a moment ago focusing on something that we want to co-create and that brings us joy, and then we walk into a space, and then all of a sudden we notice a shift in our thoughts, and then there's this maybe physical sensation in our stomach, or we feel a certain emotion bubble up to the surface. Sometimes what can happen is empaths, other people who are not consciously aware of how they're sending their energy out, just like the quote I just read you, we can end up, without realizing it, digesting other people's undigested thoughts, experiences, ideas. I used to have a friend towards the end of our friendship, and I'm grateful for all the years that we were friends, where she would just out of the blue just dump a whole bunch of things on my plate without asking how I was doing, without any, just sort of like dump. And in all consciousness, when I was unaware too, I think I did the same thing. I know I did the same thing. As people become more conscious of how they direct and send their energy, and are more responsible for how they send their energy, they tend to digest it more first. They ask for permission to share. That's how we respect each other's energy. And so sometimes the reason our throat chakras get blocked is not because we're not listening to ourselves, but it's because the noise out here, it can be a combination of things, but the noise out here is so loud that it can kind of start to drown out our own truth, because it's getting mixed in with emotions that aren't even our emotions, the emotions of other people around us. And then we get into this kind of transactional dance where, in order to feel better, we feel we need to make other people better and fix them, and before we can feel okay, because that's where we've blurred the line, the healthy boundary between this is my stuff and this is your stuff. This is my energy and this is your energy. So this is why I feel like the throat chakra is so important, because right now, at this precious moment on earth, where it's the time for all of us to really say yes to our dreams, and especially as empaths and highly sensitive souls, when we say yes, the universe doesn't just say yes. The universe says yes, yes, yes. And so what we're saying yes to is what we're getting more of. So I'm really curious. I'm going to take a moment just to check in the chat and see if there are any comments or questions or thoughts that people want to share. And let me just check here. Okay, no one here today. That's all right. What I am going to take a moment to share before I begin to wrap up today's episode is just, first of all, I want to recap briefly that caring for our throat chakra, keeping it clean and clear, starts with, first of all, making space and time to get quiet and listen to ourselves. And I highly encourage you to play with the possibility of making it a fun, playful exercise where you make your own predictions for the month and then go and listen to other people's predictions. because it will affirm you are hearing your truth. Because there's a beautiful mirroring effect when we use other people's predictions who are perhaps expanding and at a level of multidimensional awareness beyond where we're at, who can beautifully affirm and call us forward. There's something very different from putting all of our attention to authorities outside of us to tell us what's coming next, when oftentimes what they're trying to do is get us to trust ourselves more. So a beautiful way to thank them for their offerings is to honor yourself, is to make your own predictions for the month, and then listen to theirs and be delighted and pleased by the congruencies, the similarities, the aha moments. The second point I wanted to make is that it's really important when we're speaking our truth and being authentic that we're aware that we are making an energetic connection with somebody else, and we are choosing to tune into and co-create a certain frequency with our words, with our intentions, with what we're communicating, with how we're showing up. And if we do accidentally say something that a part of that witness self notices as, hey, that sounds like, so yourself 2.0 versus 10.0 version of yourself, that's okay. It's all right to gently call yourself out and say, cancel, clear, delete with a smile on your face, just so that over time, the habit of saying things a certain way can start to shift and keep this nice, beautiful truth chakra not only activated and open and balanced, but ultimately stabilize it in that truth consistently. The third point I just want to sum up is that at the end of the day, or when we've been in busy spaces, calling back our energy cleansed, cleared, and refined is a wonderful practice where we make a point of noticing when we are leaning into our truth and when we were leaning away from it. And when we have these daily sort of spiritual hygiene practices, no different than washing your face, brushing your teeth, or showering, then we have little check-in points with ourselves throughout the day that help us to stay tuned into the reason we came here for, and it gets easier along the way as we do these things. The very final thing I wanted to share with you is, if I know in the other episodes, I think the last episode I actually forgot to share it because I got so into what I was sharing with all of you, is that coming up, not this coming weekend, which is the Thanksgiving weekend here in Canada, but the following Sunday is, I think it's the 20th, I have to look at the dates again on my own thing, but is the In Rhythm with Your Soul book club. It's a free book club, and we're going to be gathering for 9 gatherings to dive into this book, and because at this time on earth, it's not only the 10th anniversary of this baby, as I've been sharing, that I birthed it into the universe, but I wrote it because I don't want you to hold yourself back. I don't want you to throw the towel in too soon. I knew that there was a book inside of me, and a part of me didn't know how I was going to go about co-creating that. There was a lot of interference energy and static on the line. So that's why it took me 10 years to write it as well. I feel like 10 years to write and 10 years, in incarnation, it's really the 20th anniversary of this dream. 2 plus the infinite in ascended numerology is, this, sacred union within, of trusting ourselves within so that we can really outpicture it in our lives. And I know each and every one of you has come here on earth because you have sacred soul gifts to share with the world. And I would love to be someone that walks beside you, if you'll invite me to do so, to squeeze your hands through the birth pains and wipe your sweaty brow, because along the way, there can be a lot of snares and pitfalls and beautiful learnings, growth, and aha moments. And turn those challenges into gifts, lemons into lemonade. And the end result is something that you feel is a gift of grace that has come through you and has been shared with the world. And this is how we're each contributing to birthing the new earth. So I hope you'll join us. You can, I'd love you to be there for all the episodes. It's on Sundays. It's going to be on Sundays at 12 noon, just right after the show for 1 hour. And just come and check it out. And if you would like to get a copy of the book, there's a link below. You can go to my website, www.pollyannablanco.com, and there's a landing page for the book club where you can get a copy of the book. It's $16.95 USD, and I will personally sign it and place a message in it of an intuitive guidance message if you would like me to do that, and if not, I'll just sign it. And I'm really excited about this club. I'm going to be sharing more next weekend. I received a wonderful message from someone who had received this book years ago. Not years. Yeah, I guess years ago now, and had finally finished reading it and left me, just because she wanted to, a wonderful message saying how sad she was that it was coming to a close and that she had enjoyed every moment of reading it. And she completely surprised and delighted me. So this is the difference each and every one of us is making in the world. We have our means of our modes of expression, our means of expression, whether it's movement, dance, art, painting, food, building communities, whatever it is, accounting even, I don't know. We all have things and gifts of grace to share with the world from this ascended, awakened perspective, vantage point. And please, if you would like some creative inspiration, if you're curious to learn more about what all of this is about, even if you don't have the book, come join us. You're more than welcome to be there. And with that, I'm going to close, everyone, and wish you a beautiful Sunday. It's a sunny Sunday here in Toronto, Canada, and wherever you are, I hope you're catching some sun rays and just taking the very best care of yourself. Wishing you lots of love and light and many creative, abundant blessings. And looking forward to sharing time with you next Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we'll be delving into the third eye chakra and spiritual hygiene for that chakra. Wishing you a beautiful, beautiful day. Lots of love and light. Be well.